Good Tuesday afternoon, guys. Jerry Miller, and welcome to the I Love CVille Show. Thank you for joining us. A lot to cover on the program today, including Virginia Tech setting a record for donations raised during the pandemic. We will highlight that story to lead the program. We will also discuss Virginia Commonwealth University, who today issued a ban on booze at fraternity and sorority events. I will pass that story along to you, and then I will ask this question. We know universities and colleges have a keeping up with the Joneses mentality, and when one university does something, others quickly follow suit. A good example of that is masks at college and universities in the Commonwealth. UVA, one of the first, now they are all following suit. So I'm going to ask you this question. VCU is banning booze at fraternity and sorority events. If UVA was to follow suit and do a similar type of edict, what impact will that have on the city of Charlottesville? I will give you my take in about 3 minutes on the program. We will also talk UVA football and whether masks will be required at Scott Stadium. The first game is September 4th against William & Mary here in Scott Stadium, and I'm curious of your take on whether we will be required to wear masks while sitting in a stadium that is outdoors. It's an interesting topic to discuss today. Mountain Dew is coming out with a new alcoholic beverage, big upgrades to the iPhone, and how much should Apple be a part of your portfolio? All those stories and more, including the jobs report number. We will assess the impact of 10.1 million job openings in America, a $1.4 trillion infrastructure bill, and how that's going to impact our country. So a lot to cover. Alex Urpí in 14 minutes. The show is presented by Skooma Boutique Dispensary on the Charlottesville Downtown Mall next to Rapture. Skooma Boutique Dispensary is your choice, is your answer, your go-to resource for the Delta 8 CBD, for anything CBD related. If you want the knowledge of CBD and how it could positively impact your life from a pain management standpoint, an anxiety standpoint, or a sleeping standpoint, David and the team at Skooma Boutique Dispensary, your choice, next to Rapture on the Downtown Mall. We thank Scott Wagner of Scott Wagner Integrated Medicine for being a part of the show. Integrated Medicine is changing people's lives. Dr. Wagner and his staff have your back. Thank you to Ting for being the power behind the I Love CVille Network. Crazy fast internet is Ting Fiber Internet. All right, the lead of the story is Virginia Tech. They set a record in donations raised during a pandemic. Supporters of Virginia Tech gave the university over $200 million, $200,300,000 to be exact, during the last fiscal year. That ended on June 30th, this past June 30th. The university cited unprecedented participation from donors, including nearly 12,400 people contributing on Virginia Tech's annual fundraising day in February. This is an 8% increase in gifts and commitments over the previous fiscal year. The university's undergraduate alumni increased from 15 to 20%. So do you guys remember March, April, May of last year? Heck, into the summer of last year, we were all concerned about the future of athletic departments and universities. The summer of last year, we thought COVID, we were crystal balling, could impact universities from a viability standpoint, keeping your lights on standpoint. And we were crystal balling the Helen Dragas model. Remember Helen Dragas, former board of visitor. She is now the CEO of a housing empire in Virginia Beach area. Helen Dragas, former Board of Visitors of the University of Virginia, about a decade ago or so, was pushing the Coursera model And the Coursera model was, let's prioritize digital and online learning so we can get a more robust student body from all over the world, as opposed to a student body that attends the University of Virginia in Charlottesville, roughly 25,000 people. The Helen Dragas model did not gain a lot of steam, but we were crystal balling that the Dragas model would be the future. We still think it is the future, frankly, I do. So as we crystal balled last year the viability of universities and whether they would pivot to this digital online format to manage COVID, Delta, and this pandemic, we started questioning the sustainability of in-person learning at schools, universities, and colleges. Well, now we have some more data, and Virginia Tech, during the pandemic, June 30 of 2020 to June 30 of 2021, its supporters donated over $200 million to the school. $200 million. That's an 8% increase in gifts from the previous fiscal year and a record for Hokies, for Virginia Tech Learning, during a pandemic. So what we learned from June 30 of 2020 to June 30 of 2021, a pandemic, this COVID crappy situation, pulled on the heartstrings of supporters of Virginia Tech. This COVID and pandemic crappy situation humanized, localized, and personalized Virginia Tech even more with its supporters. And at a $200,300,000 clip in one fiscal year, Virginia Tech sets a record for donations. That, my friends, is rallying to the call, and the supporters of Virginia Tech overcoming pandemic adversity to support the university at levels it's never experienced before. We will follow the other universities and colleges in the Commonwealth to see if they have had similar results from a donation standpoint during this pandemic. Remember, the University of Virginia, its athletic department, essentially did a GoFundMe during the pandemic to raise additional funds for the department that was very much in peril because it was not selling in-person tickets to its games. ACC tournament was canceled. The NCAA tournament was canceled 2 tourneys ago. A lot of these tournaments, the revenue that comes from the tournaments, the TV revenue, is critically important for athletic departments. So we will follow UVA and its donation totals on this network closely. The next storyline is an intriguing one. Virginia Commonwealth University, after a pledge at a fraternity, Delta Chi was the fraternity at VCU, in a pledge at Delta Chi, died earlier this year from hazing and boozing at Delta Chi. VCU announced today it will ban alcohol at fraternity and sorority events. Furthermore, it will publish misconduct instances online and pause new member recruitment. So VCU is really impacting Greek life. Leadership at VCU, brass at VCU is really impacting Greek life here. One of the reasons, and I'll cut to the chase, I was a fraternity guy myself at UVA. I was a Phi Kappa Psi. The big one at the big White House at the end of the Mad Bowl when you're driving down Rugby Road. The iconic fraternity at UVA, Phi Kappa Psi, that's the house I was a member of. I was the social chair. I was the rush chair, actively involved with the fraternity. One of the reasons you join a fraternity, I'll cut to the chase, is parties, is to have a good time. music, hanging out with co-eds, hanging out with your homies, keg parties, okay? That's nothing new. You guys know this as well as I do. So VCU, with its Greek system, it's banning booze at parties and events. It's pausing new member recruitment. New members and getting pledges into fraternities, that's critically important to fraternities and sororities. You have to get new members. That's every year is another generation of pledges or new members. If you don't get new members into Greek life will suffer. VCU is committed to publishing misconduct issues with frats and sororities online. Basically a tattletale system. You step out of line in Greek life at VCU, your name and your misconduct will be published online for everyone to see, including your parents. Okay? That's going to have an impact. So I'm going to ask you guys this question. VCU, in the wake of a pledge, Adam Oakes, who died of alcohol poisoning, a hazing incident earlier this year, VCU has banned booze at parties and events, has paused new member recruitment, and it will publish misconduct issues online with its frats and sororities. In the wake of this news, I'm going to ask you this question for the sake of a talk show. What if the University of Virginia did this? Now, they're not doing it. At least we don't know of them doing it. But we do know college and universities often follow each other's lead. We also know that Greek life in colleges and universities across the nation, Greek life is being challenged for a number of reasons, including what some folks say is white privilege, Greek life, including some folks say Greek life is only parties and creates a negative brand impact for colleges and universities because of the tremendous amount of alcohol and boozing and parties and nefarious activity that happens in Greek culture. A lot of people make the argument that Greek life and sexual misconduct is rampant in Greek life. A lot of people say that. A lot of people say that Greek life is the old boys club of colleges and universities. So the image and brand of fraternities and sororities is evolving, it's changing. Some could make an argument that that brand image has started to get a little vulnerable, and that Greek life in colleges and universities is somewhat on a shaky foundation. So I'm going to do some spitballing for the sake of a talk show, and I'm going to ask you this question. What would be the impact to the city of Charlottesville if Jim Ryan and UVA leadership said booze is banned at frats and sororities along Rugby Road? What would be the impact? I have a lot of personal perspective I can offer here. I lived in the Phi Kappa Psi house for 2 years and change. Was a rush chair and social chair, actively involved in the fraternity. The first impact of banning booze at UVA, if UVA chose to do this, it would have a huge impact on enrollment numbers or people interested in pursuing the Greek life path. One of the main reasons I joined a fraternity was to party, get after it, hang out with co-eds, keg parties, live bands, shindigs, fiestas, to have a good time. No question about it. One of the other main reasons I joined a fraternity was the benefit of having pledges, doing work on your behalf. The brothership and the fellowship was a main reason. Seeing the community of alumni that return was another reason. So I think if UVA banned booze, the numbers would drop considerably. Greek life at the university is roughly a third of the college. A third of the university is involved in a frat or sorority of some capacity. Now, what's the impact it would have on the city? Interestingly, if booze was banned at UVA, and I'm not saying it's happening, VCU has done it. I'm not saying UVA is going to do it. It's a topic for the sake of a talk show. College and universities often follow each other's lead. We also know Greek life is vulnerable right now from a brand equity standpoint. From a city of Charlottesville impact, if booze was banned at UVA frat and sorority parties, I think this would put tailwinds or drive momentum toward the UVA corner even more. Interestingly, from when I attended the university 2000 to 2004 to now in 2021, you talk to the restaurants and bars on the UVA corner, and students are not patronizing the restaurants and bars at the same frequency or clip with the same money or mommy and daddy's credit cards as they did when I was there 20 years ago or so. Less than 20 years ago. 20 to 2024. Today's 2000 to 2004, I was there. Today is 2021, so 17 years ago. Students aren't going to the corner and boozing at the bars as much as they were 20 years ago. So if UVA banned booze at frats and sororities, I think this would drive the students from boozing in mansions on Rugby Road to boozing on the corner at the Biltmore, the Virginian, Trinity, Boylan Heights, Coupe de Villes, and Buddhist Crozet Pizza Biker Bar. I think that would undoubtedly drive incremental revenue to not only the corner, but Midtown and the downtown mall. When I was a student at UVA, we went my first year to Miller's. We took the trolley to Miller's on the downtown mall, hopped on the trolley, went to Miller's to watch a band that we loved, my buddies and I, Connecticut Dave, my buddy Tom from Rhode Island, my buddy Shannon from Williamsburg. We all got on a trolley. We went to Miller's to watch Agents of Good Roots at Miller's. It was a live set. When we walked into Miller's, 18-year-olds, fake IDs, we were greeted by locals in Miller's who immediately screamed at us, UVA students are not welcomed here. That was in 2000. We felt it was not an approachable setting for us. If you look at the downtown mall today, you see UVA students, undergraduates, all over the downtown mall, all over watering holes and bars and restaurants and music venues on the downtown mall. As smartphones have become more ubiquitous in the norm, and as knowledge on these smartphones becomes more accessible through social media and through apps like Yelp, UVA students have become more informed consumers. So they're more apt, because they're more informed consumers, to spend their dollars at Zocalo, at Passiflora, at the Whiskey Jar, at the Fitzroy, because they know about them. Furthermore, you have Uber. You have rideshare applications on your phone that allow the students to get downtown much easier than when I was a student, where we had to wait for the trolley or do it the old-fashioned way, just walking down West Main Street. So if UVA banned booze at frats and sororities, this would be momentum driving incremental revenue for restaurants and bars and music venues up and down the West Main corridor, and then all the way down the downtown mall to the Sprint Pavilion. No question about that. It would be an economic driver, because students would not be boozing in antiquated or dilapidated mansions on Rugby Road. Instead, they would be boozing and partying at restaurants and bars where they would be allowed to do so. Just a topic to consider. A couple more items before we get to Alex Urpí. Alex, I'm going to go to you here very, very shortly. September 4th, a Saturday, at 7:30 p.m., UVA football will host William & Mary. what do we think is going to be the rule on masks at Scott Stadium on September 4th? I mean, guys, that is, let's see, January, February, March, April, May, June, July, August, 21. That's 25 days away. 25 days from now, it's the season opener against William & Mary. 7:30 kickoff against the Tribe. Do we think a mask will be required in Scott Stadium? I'm genuinely asking this question. It's an outdoor venue. People are going to be sitting closely together. Do we think masks are going to be required? I'm curious of what your thoughts on that. Best comments, best takes on the feed, on any of the social media platform. We'll mail you an I Love CVille sticker on us and cover the postage. Speaking of booze, PepsiCo and Boston Beer Company are teaming together to create an alcoholic version of Mountain Dew. It's a flavored malt beverage. It sounds disgusting, but still. Boston Beer Company is the brewer of Sam Adams. PepsiCo and Boston Beer Company teaming up to create an alcoholic malt beverage version of Mountain Dew. The beverage will hit shelves early 2022. Mountain Dew will belong to the flavored malt beverage category and contain 5% ABV. Mountain Dew meets malt liquor. PepsiCo and Boston Beer Company's brainchild. Let's take caffeine and let's infuse it with malt liquor, and let's market this beverage to teenagers and early 20-somethings and see what happens. What do we think is going to happen when we take malt liquor, infuse it with one of the most highly caffeinated beverages out there, and then market the drink to teenagers and early 20-somethings? Good night. That is a recipe for disaster. But I have a feeling there's a market for this type of drink. Apple is reportedly adding big upgrades to its next iPhone camera. Apple is planning a video portrait mode. So you know portrait mode on your iPhone, when you can take a picture in portrait mode, all the stuff beside you is blurred, but the image of you is crystal clear? Apple is planning on doing that with its next models. Its next models, video portrait mode for Apple. This leads me to the question which I will ask to Alex Urpí right now. Judah, I'm reaching out to Alex Urpí. Judah Wickower is our director. How much should Apple be of your portfolio? What percentage of your portfolio should Apple be? Alex Urpí is on the SCUMA hotline, the SCUMA Boutique Dispensary hotline as we speak. Good afternoon, Alex. How are you?
Good afternoon, Jerry. I'm doing well. How about you?
I'm doing well, thank you. Apple upgrading left and right. We can't, let's just take this set right here. Judah's on an Apple desktop. I'm chatting with you on an Apple MacBook Air. I am following the feed on my iPhone, I don't know, I think this is an iPhone 10 or 11. Okay? I have 3 iPads that are streaming to these televisions behind us, and each of these televisions has an Apple TV to get the iPad stream. I mean, you're probably talking close to $10,000 in Apple products right here on this set alone. Apple, I guess we can say, is life in America.
It's a huge part of it, and it's gone so much further. I remember back in the day when I think it was my brother Mikey got the first little iPod Shuffle, the very first one that you would move your fingers along, and we're like, "Oh, this is really neat," because you don't have to put the CDs into the CD player and bring them with you, and just to see what it's become, where now the biggest thing about an iPhone is the camera, and just the amazing things that you can do with those cameras. So it's come a very long way, and I think it's become ubiquitous for a lot of what we do in social media now. Just their technology, and technologies that I would say piggyback or replicate what they're doing.
I agree 100%. So my friend, Alex Urpí, is the CEO of Emergent Financial Services. His family's business will help you grow your wealth. a proven track record of honesty and wealth building. What percentage of your portfolio should Apple be, my friend?
That's a very good question. It's one we'll get a lot. I mean, last year we got that question with Tesla a great deal, but Apple obviously has been around longer, has more of a track record in terms of what they do. The key thing there with Apple is the first question that you need to ask yourself is, how much am I already exposed to Apple? Because a lot of times people will ask us, should I buy some Apple 1-2% in your portfolio? And I'll ask them, do you own an S&P 500 index fund? Because if you go to like iShares S&P 500, 6% of that thing is Apple. Because Apple is so massive at this point as a company, it is 10% of the iShares Russell 1000 growth fund. So if you own certain growth ETFs, certain S&P 500 ETFs, you're talking, think about it this way, I did a little math prior to coming on the show. If you've got, let's say you're a young person like me, you say, I want 20% of my entire portfolio to be in the S&P 500. You've got a 1.2% position in Apple. If you're slightly older and you say, well, I don't want to have small stocks, I want 40% of my portfolio to be in the S&P 500, the top 500 biggest stocks. Well, 2.4% of your portfolio is now in Apple. So I think I wouldn't go too much beyond those percentages right there. In other words, if you're on the younger side, you really don't want to be sitting there with 5 to 6% of your portfolio in one company. There are so many really small companies that have huge potential for growth. And Apple, I think, is reaching that kind of very mature stage. If you think about Apple, Microsoft, yes, they're making incredible new products, but they're now in that dividend payer, S&P 500, more stable company range, which means the growth potential is not quite what it was 10, 15 years ago already. And so as a younger person, or even as an older person, you probably don't want to go too much further than 4 or 5% in any stock, really, as a total of your portfolio. But the first thing you always have to look at is, do I already have exposure to Apple? And I just don't realize it. Because a lot of the people who will ask me that question, should I buy 2 to 3% of Apple? By the time I looked at their portfolio, they've already got 2 to 3% of Apple. It's just mixed in with all the index funds and mutual funds that they currently have.
The intelligent, the charming, and the well-spoken Alex Urpí, our guest, the CEO of Emergent Financial Services. Can you think of a company? We're relatively the same age. You are younger than I am. You are younger than I am, relatively in the same age range here. Can you think of a company that has had a bigger impact or has disrupted our lives more than Apple?
Ooh. That is a good question. I mean,
maybe Amazon?
Amazon, Google. Don't underestimate Google. I mean, so much is run through that search engine. On the business side, Microsoft, I know it doesn't get a lot of the same news as Apple.
It's not as sexy.
Microsoft, it's not as sexy, exactly. But in the business world, in terms of business servers and so forth, Microsoft is basically the tipping point there. They've crossed what's known as the tipping point for monopoly, where if you're not using Microsoft, you're at a disadvantage in terms of communication with others that are using their suite of products. So I think those companies have really they've transformed the way we do things in this country and in the world, I would say. And I think they're probably going to continue to do so, but I think they've also reached that kind of maturity phase where now the war is between each other in many ways as they grow and go forth. We'll see. Facebook, I probably wouldn't quite put into that category, but we never know what comes next with them, because they're very good at buying other companies.
This question comes in from Grayson Cano, watches the show often. Jerry asks Alex if he sees Apple as still a growing company. You look at their capitalization, how can this company get even larger?
That is an excellent question. And so I think it depends what you mean by growing. I do think Apple can grow in terms of obviously producing more revenues, thinking of new products. but I think the potential for growth, you see it, there's companies go through life cycles just like people. And Apple, I think, is now the middle-aged person that they have a stable job. They've got some kids that they're sending dividends out to and paying for. They're not really going to have a brand new brainchild and say, I'm totally going in a totally different direction in my life. I don't foresee a midlife crisis for Apple where they will go in a totally different direction. And I think you can see it in the decisions they made, right? Once a company decides that they're going to put out dividends, if you think about it, a dividend, as much as I love dividends as an investor, if you think about a dividend, that's the company's way of saying, dividends and stock buybacks, or a company's way of saying, I don't have any internal projects, aka new ideas, in the works that are better for my shareholders than simply returning money to them. Right? That's what a dividend basically is. So when you're buying a company that doesn't pay you dividends, what are you betting on? You're saying, I think they're going to have put all their money into great new projects, capital expenditures, CapEx they call it, great new projects that one day will make them tons more money that they will pay back to me as a shareholder. When you buy a company like Apple now, you're saying, I think Apple's just going to continue to make gobs of money that they will pay back to me as a shareholder. You're no longer really saying, I think, Apple is going to invent something incredibly new that they're pouring tons of money into that will transform the way we work. But if that's the case, why is Apple putting out a dividend? They should be putting all their cash into that new project. So they've gone down this road now where they're very similar to other S&P 500 companies, where there's growth, there could be higher earnings. I'm not saying their market cap will decline or won't increase, but I think that massive jump potential is probably not there anymore.
Our guest, guys, Alex Urpí, CEO of Emergent Financial Services. Alex, I own a fair amount of Apple in my portfolio. The stock split, 4-to-1 split in August of last year. When it split, I don't know the exact number off the top of my head, it put an individual share at a much more approachable or reasonable or attractable number. It was in I believe, the low hundreds. I think it was a split of 4-to-1, about 112, 115, somewhere in that range. The impact of a stock split for retail investors as the share becomes more realistic to purchase, more affordable to purchase.
So I think it has some impact. It's probably limited, but my suspicion is most retail investors are invested in Apple either through mutual funds, in which case the price of Apple is not really relevant there because the mutual fund is going to be priced differently, or they're probably doing one of these things through Schwab and Fidelity now where you can get a slice, buy your $5 piece of Apple. But I think it does have an impact in terms of how the consumer approaches it. I know when Tesla did their split last year, they did see a nice little bump of people that were said, oh, wait, I couldn't afford Tesla at $700. I can now afford it at $400, and soon enough, it began to approach $700 again. But I think it has a little bit of an impact on the psyche in terms of people saying, well, I can't get in at this amount. It seems too much. Do I really want to if I only have $2,000, do I really want to put $700 of it in one stock, and so forth? But my suspicion is that most retail investors, if you think of the average person, are probably not invested in Apple directly. They're probably through another medium.
One of the frustrating aspects I have with my trading platform, which is Merrill Edge, is Merrill Edge does not offer percentage ownership of shares.
The slice?
Yeah, like say like a Robinhood, guys. Robinhood is in the news now. It recently went public. Robinhood, in a lot of ways, is revolutionizing trading for the retail trader. You can buy a percentage of a stock. Merrill does not allow that. Just for my own personal curiosity, any idea why?
That's a tricky one. There are several custodians and brokers out there that do not utilize that method, and my suspicion is it has something to do with the way that's constructed, because as far as I know, right, when you buy a share of a stock in a traditional brokerage, one share, that title is transferred to you, right, and the custodian, which is the broker, your Merrill, is holding that in your name. right? So if you think about the old days, I actually have one. I have one share of Disney that's a piece of paper from 1992 that says Alexander or Xavier Urpí owns one share of Disney stock, right? And if you think digitally, that now happens all computer-based. I think the challenge with the percentages is I'm not even quite sure of the details of this myself. It's more difficult for me to determine who owns the title of that, because that share has not been split. In other words, you don't have a piece of paper sitting anywhere that says Jerry Miller owns 0.5 shares of Apple stock if you were to do this. So I think my suspicion is they're constructing some kind of financial security whereby people are doing that. And it could be Merrill has deemed that not the way they want to go, maybe not the most secure way to do it. There are others. You have to be extremely large. That's why if you notice the ones that are doing it have huge volume. Because my suspicion is that Schwab, Robinhood, they are holding a lot of these shares and crediting you with that percentage, which probably for certain brokers is a risk they don't want to take, but they don't want to be in a scenario where there's a question of who actually owns the share. Because technically speaking, is it the broker who's doling out 5% to a bunch of little people, or is it the people who think they own 5% and really believe that they have a little stock certificate somewhere that says 5% of an Apple share, which is probably not how it works to my knowledge.
We got some macro storylines to get to. I covered one yesterday. There's 10.1 million jobs in America that are unfilled. We also had a jobs report number from 4 days ago. Payrolls increased 943,000 in July as the unemployment rate slid down to 5.4%. So help me understand this here. Okay, you're the genius here. I'm just the guy who hosts a talk show here. So the unemployment rate is sliding downward. That's a good thing. Unemployment is going down. More people are getting jobs. Yet we still have a record number of job openings, 10.1 million in America. How does that work, Alex?
So this is actually a really good question, because I think it helps people understand what the unemployment rate is. And we saw this a lot in the last recession, in the Great Recession too. The unemployment rate is the number of people that are not employed, right, unemployed and seeking work, over the labor force, right? And not everyone in the country is in the labor force. And many times when someone stops looking, when they just stop going to that unemployment line, right, they drop out of the labor force part. So they drop out of the bottom part of that unemployment rate number, which of course makes if you think back to your basic, math, right? If you're dividing two numbers and the bottom number, right, keeps getting smaller, right, you're going to have a change in the total unemployment rate, even though, right, you're having more people getting jobs. So my suspicion is what's happening here is that you have a lot of people that are getting jobs, thereby dropping the unemployment rate, but a lot of people that aren't even in the labor force at all, right? And that's affecting the number that we're seeing. You also have huge swaths of openings, but if someone's not looking for the opening and they're not on that unemployment line trying to collect the check, they're not in this.
Yeah, they're not counted.
They're not counted at all. They are, for all intents and purposes, off the books, right? And I think that is part of what we're seeing in this scenario, right? It's possible for the unemployment rate. This is a classic conundrum, right? It's possible for the unemployment rate to decline while you actually have more people out of work, because you may have people that are not looking anymore.
You have people sitting on the sidelines.
You have people sitting on the sidelines. And that's what the scenario looks like in terms of these two numbers, because I think that 10 million is more than they've ever seen historically.
It's it's the most openings in American history. 10.1 million jobs unfilled, the most we've ever had ever.
Exactly, but there may just be a lot of people biding their time and thinking about what they want to do, and if they're not on that line collecting unemployment, or their unemployment has run out, they are not appearing in these numbers, in the unemployment rate number. 10
10.1 million job openings. Our friend Johnny Ornalis, who's watching the show now, posted earlier today, El Mariachi has job openings that they're looking to fill. El Mariachi's fantastic at Zion's Crossroads.
It is. The food there is incredible.
It's amazing. It's amazing. Every restaurant, and not every restaurant, I don't want to hyperbolize, a large chunk of the restaurants in town have openings and are begging folks for help. I saw in the news over the weekend, it was on CNBC, there's a McDonald's in Georgia that is so understaffed, it is starting new hires at $30 an hour to try to recruit talent to this franchise. And it still cannot get people to work at 30 bones an hour here. So, dude, help me understand this here. We got so many openings. We got legitimate, serious pay. I mean, Wilson Ritchie was advertising an executive chef position at one of his restaurants, $60,000, $70,000 a year for an executive chef, okay? Help me understand this here. How do we solve this? Where do we go from here? I know a lot of these unemployment benefits are expiring in September. So that could get some folks off the sidelines and into the proverbial game here. But what needs to happen in your eyes? You're the pro.
This is a conundrum, because I think my suspicion is that we have a little bit of a confluence of factors here. I think retail and hospitality has been hit the most because, let's face it, that I think a lot of people may have left that industry and others have not yet replaced them. But I think my suspicion is that the two overwhelming factors that we're looking at here are indeed the unemployment, the additional unemployment, and I think just general COVID fears of people being still nervous. There's always some kind, it seems that there's always some kind of new bad news about some way you could catch COVID, a new variants, something that keeps people nervous and not wanting to go back to work, especially if they don't have to. And I think that's the real key here, right? No one's suggesting that the unemployment that you can make right now is the equivalent of a $70,000 job or $30 an hour, right? Those are definitely higher. But what's happening is, if you don't feel comfortable or don't want to take those jobs, you can survive for the time being on what they're offering you in unemployment. I think that's the key thing here. The unemployment is giving people time to basically say, I don't feel the rush that I need to get a job now. I can look at this. I mean, I have some relatives that have done precisely this. I was going to go into this industry, but maybe I'll take 6 months and see if I want to do this career, right? And the only way that they can do that is because they can stay at home, because things are, because they can survive off what is being offered to them on unemployment. So I think that is what we're seeing, a combination of fears and this additional amount. And my hope is that as we get some kind of confidence back, maybe it's in the form of, as things get better, we just stop focusing on the negative all the time. I mean, I know bad news sells, and I think that's part of this cycle, right? But I think if we can get away a bit from the bad news sells, focus a little more on the things that are going right, which a lot of them are. I mean, 10 million job openings is a good thing. That means there's a lot of jobs out there for people. And if we can focus on those things, and hopefully in September, that little impetus to say, don't stay at home anymore. You can do so much better. Unemployment has no future prospect, right? You can make that unemployment, but there's no advancing to a higher position after that. Whereas if you get that first job at 40, 50,000 and you work hard, you can go higher and you can make more. And I feel like if we can just get that nudge there that always used to be there, maybe just hasn't for the last 12 months, we can see some real progress.
I agree with you. There are a lot of KPIs that show that the economy is heading in the right direction. Unemployment going down. I mean, we got some legislation that was recently passed to the tune of $1.4 trillion, a bipartisan infrastructure bill. $1.4 trillion. I'm reading this now here. $550 billion of this is for transportation, broadband, and utilities. This was literally passed today in the Senate. Huge step for the Democrats as they're trying to put their economic agenda into play through Congress here. I'm looking at my portfolio while doing the interview. I see Cleveland Cliffs is moving. And in fact, Cleveland Cliffs, one of my positions, which is tied to the iron and steel industry, is up nearly 25%. It's up 6% today. 1.4 trillion of Fed-backed money, right?
Basically, I mean, it's all debt. They're going to have to raise the debt ceiling again later this year.
How does this impact the economy?
I mean,
markets are moving.
It's tough to say. I mean, it is. I think things are moving. The market is obviously pleased with it because I think they're just seeing the influx of new cash. And if the last 12 months has shown us anything, it's that government spending new cash has proved very good for the stock market. And so we'll see what the long-term impact is in terms of how this translates to jobs. You would imagine some people will have to be employed to produce some of the infrastructure that they're talking about. How much so, those always remain to be seen. I mean, we've had stimulus packages before that didn't quite produce the jobs numbers we were hoping for. So we'll see where that goes. But I think the markets like it because the markets are just not, they worry about inflation in blips. And they're just not worried long term. And I think in some ways, it's not unreasonable that they don't seem to be worried because, I mean, 2009 showed us that the government can spend a lot of money out of thin air, Fed-backed money from revenues it does not have right now. And if anything, if inflation goes anywhere, it ends up in the stock market. And I think that is what the markets are saying is that, you know what, yeah, we were a little nervous about this other inflation of the year, but sooner or later, this inflation is going to end up in the stock market, and our stocks will go up. And so I think my suspicion is that's what the market is seeing. Is they're just seeing the spigots are still on, and the Federal Reserve is going to keep, keeping interest rates low, making sure. I mean, there's no way the Federal Reserve is going to raise rates and make this $1.4 trillion even more expensive because it's all borrowed money anyway.
It would tax itself.
So I think exactly it would make no sense. And I think that's what the market is seeing.
Dude, you're a breath of fresh air. He is the CEO of Emergent Financial Services, guys. Emergent Financial Services, give them a ring. Set up an appointment if you want to grow your wealth, guys. They will impact your portfolio. What is your plan for today y mañana on Thursday?
Today, mañana is going to be a lot of fun on Thursday. We've got, so we're going to have one of our partners on, Christelle Noel, State Farm Agent, is going to join us. On Thursday. She is always a blast. She always says she's so knowledgeable. They're a great partner of Today Mañana, a great sponsor. She knows everything from the life insurance to the home and auto to the businesses. Just knows it all. So we'll talk about her, see how things are going for her. She has a great team out there. We've joked about the Spice Girls of insurance before on Today Mañana that she has like that. I think now there are a couple men in there as well. For a little while, it was like an all-woman Spice Girls team, according to her husband. So Christelle is going to join us. That's always a blast. And then we're also going to have Colleen Hahn. So she is the vice president for Perrone Robotics. They're actually a robotics company here in Crozet that makes self-driving buses and vans like these. And it blows my mind. I still haven't quite wrapped my head around it. I'll just have to ask her, explain to me exactly how you do this and what you're making here. Because it's just such tech that I'm not even familiar with myself. And it's going to be so amazing to learn something from her. So that's both of those at 10:15 on Thursday.
Kevin Higgins, we'll get a couple of questions in the mix here. Kevin, I missed this.
Yeah.
Do you think the Go Green momentum is good for long-term investments, solar, renewables, electric, etc.?
The Go Green momentum.
The momentum behind thinking about the environment and going green with a lot of the stuff we do. He wants to know your take on how that's going to impact solar, renewable, electric. One that I can add to that. One of my positions is Marathon Petroleum. So I'd love to know the answer to this as well.
I think you're both right to be philosophical about it. No, but I think there is definitely long-term we are going to see renewables do very well. I think the short-term is where I think it's iffy. This year, green energy, everyone expected green energy to do really well given the new administration. But, green energy has not done very well all this year. that's perfectly all right, because I think green energy, we are looking at a long-term prospect here. And I think that's what we're looking for. I would not worry too much about marathon, because I think my suspicion is, my belief always has been, is we're going to end up with a little bit of everything approach. I suspect oil is going to be with us for a long time, because fossil fuels are really, there's no way we're covering everything with what our current tech is with renewables, especially if we don't include nuclear power in this mix, which a lot of countries are not. So I suspect that fossil fuels will still be around, short term, long, into the medium term. Long term, I think it's very good to have a small portion of clean energy in your portfolio, because, but the key is you got to be patient. You can't sell out of it because it's not doing well 1 to 2 years. You have to believe that in 10 plus years, we're going to be looking at a lot more green energy being generated than we are today.
Your friend Anthony Aldolfio,
Yes.
beyond informative and interesting, Alex and Emergent Financial Services are amazing. They are amazing.
Oh, thank
Emergent
you.
Financial
Thank
Services.
you.
Dude, I enjoy Tuesdays with you, dude. I really do. You know, it's a passion.
They're such a blast.
Yeah, and you are so knowledgeable, and you are, you know, you don't always get a lot of people in your field that have to use, what side of the brain is it that is very number?
I think it's left.
Is it the left?
I think left is numbers, right is creative.
Okay, so the thing that a lot of folks don't realize about Alex is this guy's a Renaissance man. He's a published author. He's a writer. He loves poetry.
I love doing.
He loves classical music. He's a bit of romantic. This guy right here uses both sides of his brain, very Renaissance. And I think because of that skill set, Alex, you are a really, really good interview, because oftentimes when you're chatting with folks that are on the numbers side of the brain, the interview can be somewhat dry or unapproachable. With you, it's quite the opposite, my friend. That's a testament to you. Thank you for joining us today.
I appreciate it.
I mean that.
Thank you for having me on.
You have a good one.
Take care, my friend.
Thank you. Alex Urpi is a good guy. And Emergent Financial Services is your choice, or should be your choice for retirement planning and for wealth building. Vanessa Parkhill has a comment that I'm going to get to. Vanessa, we love when you watch the program. This is from Vanessa Parkhill, who's a proud Virginia Tech mama. And she says, was it your daughter, Vanessa, that went to Virginia Tech? Is that right? Because I don't think Lee went to Virginia Tech. Did he? Please let me know. I'm curious. Proud Hokie mom here. Virginia Tech's motto is, she uses the Latin phrase. My Latin is terrible, but the translation for it is, that I may serve, that I may serve. No surprise to me that the Hokie stepped up in a big way, even during trying times. Well done. Well done. That's from Vanessa Parkhill. We love Vanessa Parkhill on this program quite a bit. Thank you for sharing that comment. Johnny Ornalis is watching the show, and Johnny anticipates more private parties at businesses. And I think he's anticipating that with the news that VCU is banning booze in Richmond and banning booze at VCU for frat and sorority parties. I asked the question, if this happened at UVA, how could it impact UVA? How would it impact the city of Charlottesville? And Johnny says more private parties at businesses. Johnny, I agree with that 100%. I remember during one rush year, during rush period, it's the recruitment period for pledges at fraternities and sororities, we would have private parties at businesses all the time at Phi Kappa Psi. In fact, one of my first tastes of the downtown mall was at a private party, a rush function at Rapture Restaurant. Rapture Restaurant. Mike and Cecilia had a private rush event at Rapture where the brothers, the pledges, and the pledges to be all congregated inside Rapture, shot pool, ate steak, and just had a great time of fellowship and a good time of getting to know each other. Good show today. I really am grateful for Alex Urpi sharing his perspective on the I Love CVille Show. And I would very much encourage you guys to watch Today y Mañana Thursdays at 10:15 a.m. on the I Love CVille Network. The show is it's excellent. I really like, I'm a huge fan of Xavier Urpi. Xavier, the closer Urpi. and Nicholas, the social media ninja, Urpi, and Alex, nice button-down shirt, Urpi. I'm trying to give nicknames to my friends here. All right, that's the program. Thank you for joining us. It's the Tuesday edition of the I Love CVille Show. We're back tomorrow at 12:30. Oh, with Earl Smith. Earl Smith of Scottsville and Southern Albemarle County fame, an influencer of tremendous proportion. Earl Smith tomorrow, 12:30 on the I Love CVille Show. Take care, guys. So long.